Hello, everyone, and many thanks for joining this stream. And of course, many thanks to all the members of our community who will join either later on or will watch this news update after the stream. Today is 22nd of August. Now it's 11 o'clock in the morning, Moscow time. And as always, I have prepared quite a number of news on some major developments that Russian media and public is paying attention to. And hopefully you will find it informative and interesting, useful. And if so, dear friends, please like the video, share if you can, and after the stream, leave some commentary in the comment section. This might help to deal with the algorithm. Also, dear friends, before I start with the news segment, let me remind you, in case you have not seen it, that yesterday late evening, I had a great conversation with a military expert, political commentator, Stanislav Krapivnik, and the interview video of that conversation is on both my channels on YouTube and Rumble. Many members of our community did like the video. It was a great conversation, by the way, and in case you have not seen it, I definitely recommend Stanislav was extremely informative in his comments, in his statements. It was a great conversation, by the way, very interesting. That can I say. And well, also after news segment, as always, I will join community chat for a little while. In case you want to support my work. I will just remind you that under this video in the description box, you will find all the links to support her. And also during the live streams, because I'm streaming on both platforms, YouTube and Rumble, you can use a super chat feature on Rumble to support the channel and also to highlight question or the comment that you might have. That's been said, dear friends, let's start news segment itself. Once again, thank you all for joining and happy Friday. And first news, dear friends, that I want to share with you is this report from RIA Novosti, which is based on the latest update of Russian Defense Ministry that air defense systems on duty intercepted their 54 drones that was launched overnight by Kyiv regime with assistance of NATO to strike deep into Russian territory. Specifics are that 19 drones were intercepted over the Bryansk region, 11 over the Volgograd region, 8 over the Rostov, 7 over the Voronezh, 3 drones each over the Belgorod and Oryol regions, 2 over the territory of Kursk region, and 1 drone was intercepted over the Crimea. In response to attacks by Ukrainian armed forces, Russian troops strike with high-precision air, sea, and land-based weapons, as well as drones at the military facilities and the military-industrial complex enterprises of the enemy. Russian Defense Ministry highlighted. Also, dear friends, I have to share with you this information that, well, despite intense work of Russian air defense systems and tremendously effective work, I will say, nevertheless, time to time, number of aerial targets, number of drones and missiles that are launched by Kyiv regime with assistance of NATO are managing to bypass air defense systems and strike certain targets. Usually it's civilian areas. And exactly on that point, we had this report this morning that the Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky has struck their Druzhba pipeline again, this time targeting their Unecher oil pumping station, a critical installation in the energy network supplying Hungary and Central Europe with Russian oil. Just days ago, you remember, dear friends, just days ago, the same pipeline was hit by Ukrainian drones and missiles, sparking a massive fire and cutting Druzhba pipeline capability by 50%, halting oil deliveries to Hungary for 4 days at least. And well, according to reports that I see this morning, oil supply to Hungary has been cut once again. Let me show you a video that is circulating on internet about this strike. So this is the video, by the way. As you can see, huge fire has erupted on that pumping station as a result of this terrorist attack on energy infrastructure of the Russian Federation, and also, by the way, on energy security of the NATO and EU member states, especially on Hungary. And this is not the first time. This is not the first time Kiev regime is doing this kind of terrorist attacks and the sabotage against EU and NATO member states, namely Hungary. And we have a statement of Hungary's Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó, who said that the Druzhba oil pipeline was attacked by the Ukrainian armed forces again. Oil supplies from Russia to Hungary have been stopped at the night. We received the news that for the third time in a short period of time, a terrorist attack was committed on the Druzhba oil pipeline on the Russian-Belarus border. Szijjártó wrote on the social network. The minister emphasized that these strikes are an attack on Budapest's energy security and an attempt to draw it into hostilities. And this is, I think, very important. We have seen quite a strong statements from Budapest in regards to terrorist activity of the Kiev regime. But if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time when a foreign minister of Hungary is kind of hinting that certain forces, this terrorist regime of Zelensky and potentially some other forces are trying actually to provoke military hostilities between the countries. And well, I would take this statement of Budapest very seriously, and I think patience of Hungarian leadership is running very low at this point, and anything is possible. We might see countermeasures from Hungarian side, which is engaged, by the way, in energy supplies of Kiev regime to control their territory. We might see cut in electricity supplies, in gas supplies, and also this statement of Szijjártó is at least an indicator that Hungary is preparing to potentially take some more stronger actions. In my personal opinion, Budapest is already preparing its armed forces, its security services to basically take a military action against the terrorist regime in Kiev, and basically to secure at least the Transcarpathia region that used to be part of Hungary before First World War. I think this is a very significant statement. During the day, most likely we will learn some more about it, and of course I will share additional information in next update and on my Telegram and Twitter X pages. TASS News Agency is also reporting that Russian armed forces liberated the settlement of Alexandra Shultina in a DPR. Let me show you on the map, dear friends, where this settlement is located. So this is the settlement itself on the southern eastern flank of Konstantinovka settlement. And if you take a look at the map, dear friends, it is becoming clear that Russian armed forces were developing ground for operational encirclement of Konstantinovka, and soon we might actually see final battle for this settlement. As you know, it is literally daily reports on the topic of liberated settlements. Literally on daily basis, we are receiving information about liberation of more and more settlements by Russian armed forces on line of contact. This information about liberation of Alexandra Shultina is confirmed by Russian Defense Ministry, although I'm quite sure more settlements were liberated, but being an extremely conservative institution, understandably so, Russian Defense Ministry always takes quite a lot of time, by the way, before confirming progress of the Russian armed forces on this or that direction. Also, dear friends, I'm quite sure majority of our community have already heard that citizen of this former Soviet Republic, Ukraine, suspected in a Nord Stream explosion, was detained in Italy, scapegoat basically I believe when Biden's administration authorized terrorist attack on Nord Stream pipelines, and of course this terrorist attack was conducted by U.S. There can be no doubts about that. We all remember report of Seymour Hersh, award-winning U.S. journalist, who, based on his sources, reported quite a while ago that U.S. was actually behind this terrorist attacker. Norway, and I will add that such terrorist attack could not be done without active participation of UK and Poland, at least, right? But I believe while preparing this terrorist attack on Nord Stream pipelines, US CIA, US and British intelligence services, they did authorize Kiev or ordered Kiev to build up a certain group that would work on idea of conducting terrorist attack on these pipelines. Of course, activity of this group was tracked, trace of this group was documented, and it was set up, by the way, from the beginning, so that citizens of Ukraine, that investigation in Germany, for example, now claims that were involved in this terrorist attack, this group actually would serve then as a scapegoat to divert attention of public from forces that were actually behind this terrorist attack. That is U.S. Political leadership, U.S. intelligence, and U.S. Defense Ministry, right? Pentagon, together with a number of countries, not number of other NATO member states. So one of these scapegoats were arrested under Germany's warrant, I believe, in Italy. Let me give you some details on that. So Ukrainian citizen has been detained in Italy on a suspicion of involvement in the bombing of the Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2 pipelines. This was stated in a statement by the German Prosecutor General's office. So the prosecutor's office stated that on the night of August 21st, 2025, on the basis of a European arrest warrant issued by the investigating judge of the Federal Court on August 18, 2025, in the province of Rimini, Italy, Ukrainian citizen Sergei K. was detained by the Carabinieri in a close cooperation with the International Police Cooperation Service. The man is suspected of the complicity in organizing explosions and unconstitutional sabotage, the statement said. And allegedly, German prosecutor's office claims that Sergei K. was a part of a group of individuals who plant explosive devices on the Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2 gas pipelines in the area of the island of Bornholm in September 2022. Detainee was presumably one of the coordinators of the operation. He and his accomplices used a sailing yacht that left Rostock as a means of transport, the department said. And yet again, these are entire this group, but that was set up, by the way, by Kiev regime secret services under the orders of their Western masters, CIA and MI6. This group was created from the very beginning as a scapegoat, right? And that's exactly what is happening. Of course, none of us are believing that German investigators actually gonna conduct investigation and they're gonna come up with their objective judgment. They just cannot do it. In no circumstances, German so-called leadership will say that it was U.S., Norway, UK, Poland, and the potential number of other countries that were actually behind this terrorist attack and sabotaged basically national security of Germany, another NATO member state, right? Let's monitor the situation, how far this sickening elements gonna go in this cover-up story. But obviously, people that were paying attention to these developments know perfectly well who was behind this terrorist attack, and that's it, right? No one trusts German either prosecutor's office or investigators or the political leadership, anyways, isn't it? To continue, dear friends, of course, nowadays one of the main topic of discussion in the public here in Russia and worldwide, I will say, also in the media, is a topic of potential peace in regards to Ukrainian crisis. I'm skeptical that, unfortunately, I'm skeptical that we're going to see actual peace anytime soon because globalists and globalist control regimes in Europe are demonstrating literally on daily basis that they are not about peace. All they wanted is some break for their proxy regime to rearm and reorganize and then to restart this proxy war again. Western ruling class is clearly still dreaming about achieving strategical defeat of Russia. So until this is the case, unfortunately, there is no objective reasons to be optimistic, in my personal opinion, no matter how much we want this conflict to end. And on this very topic, dear friends, we have this report from TASS News Agency that Foreign Minister of Russian Federation, Lavrov, called the presence of the foreign troops in Ukraine unacceptable for Russia. And obviously, one of the ways Western ruling class is attempting to derail any chances for peace is a constant push for deployment of NATO troops into Kiev-controlled territory. And even though Moscow, Russian high-ranking officials, including Russian president, were very clear on this matter that this is completely unacceptable for Russian Federation, for Moscow, I guess due to recent activization of this topic by globalists and their puppet regimes in Europe and their media, Sergei Lavrov decided that it is important to highlight Russian position once again. So let me give you some details on that. The presence of the foreign military forces on Ukrainian territory is unacceptable for Russia. This was stated by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov at the press conference following talks with the Indian Foreign Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar. We have quote here, as the West's discussions with the Ukrainian side show, all these plans are connected in essence with their providing guarantees through foreign military intervention in some part of the Ukrainian territory. And I very much hope that those who are pitching such plans, either they are simply trying to attract attention to themselves, or I hope that they understand that this will be absolutely unacceptable for Russian Federation and for all sensible political forces in Europe, the minister emphasized. And of course, Russian foreign minister knows perfectly well what is going on. He knows that globalist control regimes in UK, France, Germany, and elsewhere all over the Europe, they want prolongation of this proxy war. They want to derail any chances for peace. Any initiatives in this regard, and that's exactly why they are constantly speculating on a topic of deployment of their troops, because they know this is completely unacceptable for Moscow, and they know while deploying their troops, they might actually trigger widening of this conflict, and their hope is that they will bring in US, right? Because without US, European states, no matter how much they're going to brag, how tough and strong they are, without US assistance, European states literally have not even theoretical chance against Russia, right? And this is a historically accurate statement, by the way, that I'm making, right? With US, these globalists and globalist control regimes also have no chance to achieve a strategical defeat of Russia. What would happen if conflict would actually escalate on such a scale is that everything will end. War between NATO, including US and Russia, full-scale war means end of everything. And we all know this perfectly well. So it will be better for globalists to come to their senses and begin de-escalating, because not even theoretically they can achieve their sickening goals. That's it. Foreign Minister of Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov, also made a number of other statements. Let me give you these other statements. So, Ukraine's position suggests that Kiev wants to undermine Trump's settlement efforts. And by saying so, I believe Lavrov was commenting on statements of Zelensky, who refused, by the way, to give a Russian language and Russian speakers, by the way, equal rights to their, equal rights, basically, right? And Zelensky refused to protect either Russian speakers or the Russian language, despite the fact that it is in Ukraine's so-called constitution, by the way, that language should be protected. Russia supports the principles of security guarantees agreed upon Istanbul in 2022. Everything else is a faulty undertaking, Lavrov said. He added that, in fact, Europe is proposing foreign intervention on a part of Ukrainian territory. This is absolutely unacceptable for Moscow. When and if it comes to signing future agreement with Ukraine, the question of the legitimacy of their signatories from the Ukrainian side will arise. Of course, it will, because yet again, dear friends, even though West is acknowledging Zelensky or recognizing Zelensky as to be a legit president of Ukraine, he is not actually, right? And therefore, for the Russian side, for Russian Federation, it is definitely important that whomever will be signatory from Kiev side, if agreements are reached, actually, should be legit, should have legitimacy, and Zelensky is in not that position, and Moscow is very clear on that since forever, it seems. Lavrov also expressed hope that Europe's course to undermine efforts to resolve the situation in Ukraine will fail, and that Russia and the United States will continue to work as their leaders agreed. Well, bit optimistic statement of Sergei Lavrov, because I'm not quite sure that either Trump or his administration will maintain a position that they demonstrated like a few days ago after the Alaska summit. They might flip-flop literally at any time, and yesterday we already had indicators of that. Trump made quite a strange statement, to say the least, and I will get to that later on. And it seems like globalists are having their way in Washington once again. So maybe this statement of Lavrov is just too optimistic. I don't know. We will find out. And also, Lavrov stated that Putin is ready to meet with Zelensky only if all the issues that require discussion at their highest level are well worked out. And this is, of course, also understandable, absolutely understandable statement. Russian president himself said there on numerous occasions that he has no issue with meeting with anybody, right? But to have such a meeting, obviously, topics of discussion or confrontation or whatever have to be resolved, right? Certain agreements have to be in place. Otherwise, what is the point to have a meeting? Just to talk about, just for sake of talk? This is not the way serious politicians are conducting themselves, right? And also, as Lavrov stated earlier, issue of legitimacy has to be resolved in addition to necessity of reaching agreements first, before a Russian president will actually consider having a meeting with Zelensky. Absolutely understandable take, in my personal opinion. And if you ask me, dear friends, I don't want, in any circumstances, Russian president to waste time to have a meeting with that despicable element that Zelensky is. I said yesterday, I said day before yesterday, and many times before, that if Russian president wants and interested to know what is the position of globalists or the globalist puppet regimes all over the Europe, he can take a phone and call either in London or in Paris or Berlin or elsewhere. Why would he talk to Zelensky to find out what is the position of globalists and their puppet European regimes are? Isn't it? Zelensky is not an independent actor, isn't it? He is a puppet of their puppets, right? So therefore, I don't want Russian president to waste single second under whatever circumstances to meet Zelensky. It does makes no sense to me whatsoever, right? Also, dear friends, I want to share with you this report from Reuters, which writes that allegedly Putin's demands in regards to Ukraine are to Donbass to be, completely free from enemy hostile forces and no NATO whatsoever, and the Western troops on Kiev-controlled territory. Well, I mean, I can understand second and third part of this report from Reuters, but when it comes to topic of withdrawing enemy forces from new Russian regions, well, it's not just Donbass, by the way. It's Kherson and Zaporozhye regions too. It's a Kherson and Zaporozhye regions too. And I don't believe a Russian president ever said that enemy forces have to withdraw only from Donbass, which is we perceive as a DPR and LPR. Maybe Reuters journalists or the Western public figures and Western so-called journalists are calling Donbass whole of Eastern Ukraine. Maybe that is the case. I don't know. And that's why they use this word. But I don't believe that Russian president would ever made the statement that his demand is, or Russia's demand is to enemy forces to be withdrawn just from Donbass. No, man, they have to withdraw from all Russian regions, period. And of course, it's completely out of conversation that Ukraine cannot be a member of NATO, this terrorist organization, and they're a tremendously hostile bunch of states, tremendously hostile towards Russia. And of course, there can be no Western troops on Kiev-controlled territory. It's just too obvious, right? But as I said, dear friends, as I said, we already had the indicators sort of yesterday that Trump and his administration may be beginning to flip on their previous position that we hear after the Alaska summit. And on that very topic, we have this report from RIA Novosti that Trump allegedly allows for a change in approach to Ukraine in the near future. US President Donald Trump said clarity on the Ukrainian peace settlement would come within the next 2 weeks, adding that he could change his approach to the issue after that period. We have a quote from him. I'll tell you, I'll let you know, I think within 2 weeks, we'll know one way or another. After that, we might have to take a different approach, but we'll see. He told radio host Todd Stames when asked about the timeline for the peaceful end to the Ukrainian conflict. And dear friends, I can give you a short video of this statement of Trump. I believe I have that video here, so this is it.
Dying. A lot of soldiers are dying, 5,000 to 7,000 a week.
Do you think we're going to be able to get peace in that region, Mr. President?
Well, I'll let you know in about, I would say within 2 weeks, we're going to know one way or the other. And after that, we'll have to maybe take a different tack, but we'll see. But we'll know pretty soon.
So, as you see, dear friends, one might argue that possibly this statement of Trump could be indicator of change of position of the White House already, only after a few days since the Alaska summit. And I'm saying so because we also have this report, by the way, or I should say, I rather say statements of Trump that he made on his Truth Social. And let me read for you, by the way, what he wrote yesterday in regards to Ukrainian crisis. It is a very hard, if not impossible, to win a war without attacking an invader's country. It's like a great team in a sports that has a fantastic defense but is not allowed to play offensive. There is no chance of winning. It is like that with Ukraine and Russia. Crooked and grossly incompetent Joe Biden would not let Ukraine fight back, only defend. How did that work out? Trump is asking. Regardless, this is a war that would have never happened if I were president. Zero chance. Interesting times ahead. President DJ T. And well, I don't know about you, dear friends, but when I saw this statement of Trump, I take it as yet another threat of him towards Russia, another threat that U.S. might begun or maybe already did send long-range weapon systems and more offensive weapon systems to Kiev regime. He is kind of threatening Russia here, as I can tell, with the attacks, right? And he is factually inaccurate if he wants to say that Biden didn't provide Kiev regime with enough offensive weapons. Then I mean, Trump is just lying. He has no freaking idea what he's talking about, because Biden's administration did everything to provide Kiev regime with hundreds of tanks, thousands of tanks, actually, mainly Soviet era tanks, but Western tanks were also deployed there. U.S. Abrams tanks, British Challengers, German Leopard 1, Leopard 2s, right? Thousands of infantry fighting vehicles were transferred to Kiev regime, Soviet era build and also Western builder, including relatively new variations, by the way, like Bradleys, like Strikers from US, like Swedish SV-90 infantry fighting vehicles, German Marder infantry fighting vehicles. These are offensive weapon systems, by the way. These are not defensive weapon systems, right? Nothing to be said about hundreds of artillery systems, thousands actually, of artillery systems that were transferred to the regime in last 3.5 years. Also, by the way, multi-launch rocket systems like HIMARS and many others. Tactical missiles, by the way, since when ATACMS become a defensive weapon system, right? And hundreds of ATACMS missiles, tactical missiles were transferred to Kiev regime by this administration, right? Also, by this administration, authorized transfer by UK and France cruise missiles, right? Storm Shadow and Scalp PG cruise missiles. And eventually, very same by this administration, by the way, authorized the European NATO member states to transfer F-16s too. And one should keep in mind that if in any weapon system there is that might be produced not in US, but in its details uses any components that made in US, then those countries that have those weapons have to acquire permission from the US to send this weapon system anywhere, right? So therefore, because there is a US components, US-made components in Storm Shadow British cruise missiles or Scalp PG French cruise missiles, they had to have a permission from the Washington to deploy those systems against Russia. Same goes obviously for F-16s. Even if those planes were in inventory of European NATO member states, these planes are built by US, and whenever weapon systems are transferred, exported weapon systems are transferred to third parties, you have to have a permission of country that made these weapon systems, right? So Trump is actually inaccurate saying that, well, Biden's administration did not provide Kiev regime with offensive capabilities. They did, by the way, and I remind you that in 2023, NATO, in summer 2023, NATO actually organized, prepared a large-scale offensive operation in which 150, 200,000 troops of Kiev regime were engaged in the Zaporozhye sector of the front line, right? And those are brigades, by the way, tens and tens of brigades of the Kiev regime that were participating in this offensive were trained and armed by NATO. So what Trump is talking about, Kiev regime did try to attack, right? What about 2024 and the incursion into Kursk region? So, which was also operation, this invasion was also prepared and orchestrated by the NATO generals, right? By NATO. So Trump is actually wrong on this statement, factually wrong. But nevertheless, what you make of this post of the Donald Trump, dear friends? Is he hinting that in 2 weeks' time, Washington might begin escalating its rhetorics and also its policies? That's how I see this, anyways, right? And this is very unfortunate. This is very unfortunate because, like a few days ago, I was cautiously optimistic that maybe Trump and his administration, America First forces, finally are on the same page with Moscow on the escalatory ladder. But I'm not that sure now, by the way. I'm not that sure now. Maybe globalists once again have their way in White House. Who knows? And we're already receiving, dear friends, informations about potential escalatory steps that U.S. might take. For example, RIA Novosti is reporting, based on reports from Western media, CNN in this particular case, that United States is considering the use of unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, basically, as a part of ensuring Kyiv security. This was reported by CNN, citing an unnamed European diplomat. We have a quote here: potential air support has become a major theme, and while there is some concern within the Trump administration about using American pilots to fly manned air support missions over Ukraine, there is a greater openness to flying on air support missions using unmanned aircrafts. And you know what? Russian side was very clear. Unmanned vehicles, drones, or manpower of NATO, none of it is acceptable for Moscow in Ukraine, period. And if US sends its drones, then you guess what Russian side gonna do with these drones. If European NATO member states will send their ground forces, you guessed what Russian armed forces is going to do to those ground forces of NATO. They're going to be obliterated. That's how it is, man. They stood no chance, period, right? So unfortunately, it seems like Washington is again all about escalation. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing something here, but that's how it looks like to me, at least. Also, we have this report from Vzгляд newspaper that State Department announces Europe's leading role in guaranteed security for Ukraine. At the meeting with European security advisors, that meeting took place yesterday, by the way, I believe. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the White House expects Europe to play a leading role in providing security guarantees to Ukraine. This was also reported by CNN. According to information from the CNN TV channel, at the meeting with European security advisors, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio emphasized that White House is counting on Europe's leading role in providing security guarantees to Ukraine. Rubio himself did not provide details of the possible guarantees, noting only their U.S. interest in participating in ensuring Kyiv security, but with an emphasis on the leading role of European countries. So, well, instead of actually de-escalating and instead of actually pushing on globalists and globalist puppet regimes to de-escalate. Unfortunately, Marco Rubio and seems like Trump too now are all about further escalation. This topic of so-called security guarantees for Kiev regime is clearly their attempt to derail any chances for potential peace. They clearly are pushing for next phase of escalation, which is seems to be is inevitable at this point. It is what it is, and Europeans, by the way, European globalist regimes are not happy with the idea of US is providing only drone support potentially. They want also US Air Force to deploy F-35 fighter jets into Romania. So Kiev's Western European backers have asked the US to deploy F-35 jets to Romania as a security guarantees to help end the Ukraine conflict. The Times reported on Wednesday how this escalatory step is going to help to end the conflict. By the way, I mean, what is wrong with these crazies, or at least why they would not shut up, right? Why they are embarrassing themselves while coming up with these crazy statements that while deploying troops and escalating with Moscow, they're going to achieve peace in Ukraine. What are these people this stupid really that are formally in charge of Europe? I don't know, but when it comes to future developments, by the way, in regards to Ukrainian crisis, I think we have every indicator basically to be sure that unfortunately it is practically impossible at this point to avoid the next phase of escalation. Globalist control regimes in Europe, and seems like Washington are on the same page on this matter, and it's only like maybe matter of days or potentially weeks, and we're gonna see this next level of escalation, during the which, by the way, Moscow will have no option. I'm quite sure about it. Moscow will have no option but to deploy extreme force. It might be something like Oreshnik or whatever, to maybe even more extreme force. But I think as a result of next phase of escalation that globalists are triggering here, that globalists are provoking, Moscow will have no option but to deploy extreme force. And that force is going to be on such a level, by the way, on such a scale, that after deployment of that force by Moscow, globalist puppet regimes in Europe, and also whoever is actually in charge in Washington, all of them gonna wake up, and very fast. All of them gonna come to their senses and realize that any further steps towards the escalation will be the end of everything. That's the way situation is heading, by the way. I'm afraid, and it is unfortunate. If U.S. was consistent, if U.S. leadership, current leadership, was consistent in its position, then peace might actually had a chance, or could had a chance. But I mean, take a look at the Washington, by the way. What Trump is doing, what others are doing, they are flip-flopping literally on daily basis, and you cannot rely on anything that they say, right? So therefore, we take indicators that we have, and those indicators are that this war gonna escalate towards unprecedented scale, right? And today, by the way, Trump gonna deliver a speech at 1900 hour. Moscow time. I don't know what time is going to be in Washington, and who knows what he's going to say. Speculations are that he might spoke about Ukrainian crisis, although he might spoke about, I don't know, Washington D.C. by the way, and whatever war he has with crime and homelessness in Washington. So 1900 hours Moscow time, Trump will make a statement today. Let's see what he has to say. And by the way, before I continue, let me notice, if I may, that well, this media project from Russia, as many of you know, is completely subscriber funded and only exists as long as I have your support. So if you like my work, if you like my channels, want to see potential, not just this project to be saved, but if you want to see potential further development of this project, please consider to support. You can do it through several means. You can donate to this project through PayPal or Boosty platforms. Links are on this video in description box. Also, and will be in the pinned comment after the stream. Also, you can subscribe to my Patreon page, dear friends. You can choose your level of monthly support there, from $5 and up. Same is on Boosty platform. Links to my Patreon and Boosty also are on this video in description box and in the pinned comment. You can support with the crypto if you are good with that. And during the live streams, you can use a super chat feature on Rumble and become a premium subscriber. Of course, everything counts, obviously. Everything is help and helps to maintain this project. And many thanks to everybody, of course, who supported and continues to support and keeps me in this field of news and political commentary. As I said, all the links are on this video in description box and in the pinned comment. And that's been said, dear friends, let's continue with some more news. And what is next? RIA Novosti is reporting that US has allegedly stopped sharing intelligence on Ukraine with their allies. I don't believe in this report, but nevertheless, that's what CBS originally reported. So United States has stopped sharing intelligence with its Western partners in Five Eyes Alliance regarding peace talks on Ukraine, CBS reports, citing sources in American intelligence. It's a lie, by the way. I don't believe in this, not even for a second. U.S. intelligence community lives in a very different world, and even if Washington issued such order, or by Trump's administration, U.S. intelligence community not going to listen to that, right? They have different bosses, by the way. They don't work for White House, and they prove that many times, right? They don't work for White House. They don't take orders from elected officials in U.S. They are in a very different world, and if anybody has any doubts about it, then, well, I have Mount Everest, by the way, there in Himalayas to sell, right, to that person. Also, Economist originally reported that CIA fires top Russia analyst, which is interesting. So one of their CIA's most senior analyst on Russia has been suspended from her job by Director of the National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, for her participation in preparing a report on Russia's alleged interference in the U.S. Elections. This was reported by the British weekly magazine, The Economist, citing sources. And, well, in any case, by the way, if this information is true and Tulsi Gabbard fired that personality that was designated as a top Russia expert in CIA, well, information, if that person was fired, okay, that is good step, right? That's something positive, because that individual was engaged in a deception operation against the U.S. public, right? Which should be crime, by the way, and I believe it is a crime by U.S. law, and I guess similar laws are in all countries, right? But on the other hand, this information confirms, isn't it, what I just said, that intelligence community in U.S. don't take no orders from White House or elected officials. They just don't. White House might have legit means to fire, to to intervene some ways and fire this or that personality, but this intelligence community don't take no orders from them, right? And they will continue to serve to whatever forces they were serving for previous decades and decades and decades. And I believe among those forces, globalists are the leading one. That's how I see the situation. And also, dear friends, I want to share with you a relatively long video. It's several minutes, but I think interesting video in which Steve Bannon, one of the ideologists of the American First movement or the MAGA movement, is when he is talking about number of European states, this Ukrainian crisis, and seems like maybe I'm mistaken, but seems like he don't want America to have anything to do with this war, this proxy war that globalists are waging against Russia, and he wants US to be pulled out of this conflict. Share in the comment section, dear friends, what your take is going to be after we will listen to this short clip. But that's my impression. Bannon himself is a controversial figure, no doubts about that. But nevertheless, he has quite an influence. Yet again, you cannot become one of their ideologists of their entire movement if you have no influence, right? So I guess his take on the situation has some weight or some, and deserves attention. Let me share with you, dear friends, this short video.
Turn to Europe. The Germans said we don't have the resources to put anybody on the line of contact to really have anything to do with security guarantees. Maybe we can put up some money or maybe some weapons. And gosh, one of the reasons we don't have manpower is because we have a whole battalion that we put up in, I think, Latvia, right? We put a whole battalion of people up there, and we're really strapped.
He is mocking basically a number of European states, including Germany, in this particular episode.
Of course, this is a country it's trying to get manpower, and they can't get people to serve. Why? Because only 9% of German, I think it's men, want to defend their country. So that's Germany. UK, Starmer gets off the plane, and the head of and this was reported on The Guardian. I put it up, another article. They report right away, Starmer doesn't have the resources. The military's sitting there going, we cannot be on the line of contact. Maybe we can take a port, and maybe we can, defend Odessa. Maybe we put some people in the port or maybe in the air. And now this is the same Navy that's not giving us virtually no help while the United States Navy keeps the Suez Canal open so that 97% of the goods and services that go through there are the goods that serve Europe and keep Europe connected to Asia and also to the Middle East. So England's out. And they're also financially a debacle. And as you know, they're going to need their own troops for the coming civil war in England, which is going to happen. Macron goes...
Dear friends, this is not the first time when a number of political commentators, analysts and so on, are mentioning risk of a civil war in UK. During yesterday's my interview with military expert and political commentator Stanislav Krapivnik, we also touched up on that subject. I definitely recommend, if you have not seen that interview, to listen to it. It was very interesting interview, and Krapivnik also spoke about possibility or the risks of a civil war in UK. So because that so many people are now focusing on this issue, I guess situation there in UK has to be really tense and close to breaking point. I mean, society or social fabric was stretched beyond limit in UK for quite a while now, but I wonder what our friends from UK will say about it, because there is clearly, on daily basis we are hearing these predictions that UK might end up in a large-scale internal destabilization, internal conflict. Is the situation this bad? Please, dear friends from UK, share your take on the situation.
up, and he's talking big talk. He's big talking Macron. He's Napoleon, the fifth or whatever it is. He's talking big talk. He's the embodiment of de Gaulle. And the Politico does an amazing piece, Politico Europe. They got a good team over there, and they eviscerate all of them. And remember, Politico is not exactly war room, right? They eviscerate all of them and say, hey, these guys don't have the finances. They got massive economic problems. They don't have enough military for their own. And plus, France has got its own issues, what they've done to allow these radical jihadists into their country. So that's out. Poland didn't even get on the plane. You know why Poland didn't get on the plane? They didn't want to embarrass President Trump by putting some phony front up. Now, what got revealed, and this is coming from different Russian sources, but it's been kind of verified, and maybe the number's not totally accurate, but they're saying Russian cyber hackers have released information that show that Ukraine has 1.7 million casualties, dead and wounded. Now, the reason this kind of, or at least directionally makes sense, President Trump keeps talking about classified information that he's seen that shows you the killing's much worse, and that's what he wants to stop is the killing. What this reinforces, particularly when you look at the scale, it's not 2022 and 2023. In 2025, according to these hackers, and they supposedly back it up, and there's a lot of these podcasts now that are going through some of the details, 625,000 dead and wounded Ukrainians since the beginning of this year.
Bannon is talking about, of course, information that was shared with the public by Killnet, a hacker group. I reported about this in previous updates. Killnet hacked basically a database of general staff of Ukraine and gained access to information, vast volume of information. Among this data, there is also information about casualty numbers on side of Kiev regime, and based on data that is available, Kiev regime since their beginning of special military operation lost killed and missing, by the way, not killed and wounded, but killed and missing. That's how I read their information, right? Reports that I see were talking about killed and missing, not wounded. Wounded is a different story, but killed and missing. And when it comes to missing personalities, my understanding was that thousands and thousands of people were missing. In that database, there was only place where these people get missing, right? And my understanding was that these people were designated as missing because there was maybe nothing left of them after long-range precise strikes of Russian Air Force or missile forces or whatever. You can imagine that if, let's say, a company is moving on certain area or based in certain building, and then FAB 500 will smash to that building, or FAB 1500 or FAB 3000, literally nothing gonna be left from this company, right? Literally nothing. And entire company will be designated then as a missing because during their combat operations, high intensity fighter, I don't think Kiev regime will send their its troops to collect the remnants of this 100+ killed militaries from that company, right? So that's my understanding. This missing means, right? And Bannon is referring to information from this Killnet hacker group that received and continues to share more and more information, by the way, literally on daily basis. Let's continue anyways.
This kind of makes sense because this is why it's been a massive fight in their parliament by parents saying, you're not taking my young sons and daughters. It's not going to happen. And they've stopped that. But what they've done is open it up that people over 60 years old can go serve in the military. Here's the brutal facts. And this is why the Russians won't agree to a ceasefire. It's just the ironclad logic of war. The Europeans don't have the money, the resources to defend themselves. This whole thing with Zelensky sitting there, well, I'm going to dig in here and I'm going to, dude, if we don't put up the money and don't put up the arms, and I think now the fact is the more money we put up and the more arms, you're just going to have more dead Ukrainians. I think Jack Posobiec, Ben Harnwell, Stephen K. Bannon, and others on this show back at the beginning days of the war back in 22 mentioned Professor Mersheimer. You know, the EU elites are going to fight until the last Ukrainian is dead. Well, that's what they're doing. This is pretty logical. So and Hugo Lowe, the great Hugo Lowe over at The Guardian, who does a really good job of covering President Trump. Now, look, it's The Guardian, so it's going to be left-wing. But he just said today on really good reporting, well-reported and looks like well-sourced from the White House, President Trump's kind of going, hey, I'm going to step back for a second. I kind of seen the playing field. I've seen how these guys are not really stepping up, and I told them they had to. Let Zelensky and Putin figure out if they can get into a room for a bilat. If they do, then I'm around for a trilat, but I'm not going over. I'm not making phone calls to make this meeting happen. Good on you. You got each other's numbers. Let's make it happen. I don't think we're going to be talking in the coming days, and I think this has got to be a reality check for people, and particularly those demons in the Senate that are trying to push through a $58 billion another bailout package for the Ukrainians so Zelensky and that crew can grift more off the top. Okay? That is blood money. Right now, because
it is also important to notice that, yes, there are so-called lawmakers in U.S., by the way, that are pushing for another bailout for this Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky, while pushing for allocation of tens of billions of dollars in addition to whatever billions were sent or allocated already. Trump is talking about some 350 billion. Some other experts are saying 150, 200. God knows how much U.S. taxpayers' money were actually stolen from them, right? And these so-called lawmakers in U.S. want to allocate another tens of billions of dollars. That's what Bannon is mentioning there.
We're going to be in a situation that you're not talking about deal and you're not talking about, oh, this little bit territory, that. You're going to be talking about a surrender. The Europeans are not going to send any troops. Full stop.
I might disagree with Bannon on that. I think globalists will actually try to escalate towards the next phase, and one of the ways they can do it is to order basically London, Paris, and Berlin to send their troops right on the ground. And their hope of globalists is that the U.S. gonna get engaged, right? Because without U.S., yet again, they don't have military force. With U.S., well, if it comes to full-scale war, then everything is finished, right? It's the end of humanity. But without U.S., globalists and globalist-controlled regimes in Europe don't really have a force, by the way. Much of it, at least, right? They definitely cannot fight Russia. Cannot. They can try, but they will learn hard way that that was a grave mistake. So I think they're gonna try to escalate, and one of the ways, as I said, is to send the troops. But nevertheless, Bannon thinks otherwise. But he had a good point, by the way. It's not gonna be negotiations in a classical manner. When it comes to it, by the way, when Russia will finally bring Western so-called elites to their senses, we're not going to see classical, negotiations in a classical understanding. Russia will basically accept surrender of enemies. That's how it's going to be, and that's the point that I believe Bannon is making there. Let's. The
Europeans are going to send virtually no money, full stop, because they ain't got it. They're going to look to Uncle Sugar to do both, and we need to sit there and go, you cannot continue to do this because more Ukrainians are going to die. You have to accept some reality here. I think you're looking at, and since we've called every shot on this right, I'm not so sure you're ever going to get to a quote-unquote deal. I think now you're going to be looking at what I refer to as a surrender. Unless Germany steps up with combat personnel, unless France steps up with combat personnel, unless the United Kingdom steps up with
Bannon is mistaken there. No matter what European states, globalist controlled states are going to do, and they are in no position now and not going to be in a position ever to actually have a chance in a war with Russia. They tried it on numerous occasions in the past. They always failed and will always fail. That's their historically accurate statement, and that's it. By the way, they have just to live with that. That's it.
combat personnel. And my favorite, Georgia phony Maloney, unless she steps up with combat personnel, I don't know how this thing plays out, because the Russians are not stop. They're not going to stop the pounding.
So that's quite interesting statements from Bannon, isn't it? The video was a little longer, but nevertheless interesting. Especially if we keep in mind that this person, by the way, is one of the ideologists, most influential ideologists of the MAGA movement, and potentially has some influence on White House, maybe not as much as globalists do, for example, or globalist allies among neocons, but nevertheless. So quite interesting statements from Bannon there. And he is on point, by the way. He is definitely on point while saying that it's not going to be no deal, by the way, in classical sense. There are going to be no negotiations when Russia will bring Western so-called elites to their senses. It's going to be act of surrender that Western elites will sign up for. That's it. They will capitulate. If anybody thinks otherwise, yet again, I have a Mount Everest in the Himalayas that I can sell to those people, right? Let me continue, dear friends, with some more news. And we have this report from TASS News Agency that, there was yet another attack on Russian trade mission, by the way, in Switzerland with a drone. It's the third time, I believe, this had happened. And it is unfortunate. Swedish government seems like does nothing. They just simply don't care. And questions might rise here in Moscow, by the way. Do we actually need any mission in Sweden? I mean, trade mission is a part of diplomatic mission, right? So if this continues, at one point Moscow might say, you know what, we are evacuating our diplomatic staff from here, and you do the same, Sweden. I mean, do they really want that in Sweden among Swedish elites? I don't know. Maybe they do. But information is that Russian trade mission in Sweden was attacked again using a drone. This was reported by the Russian embassy on its Telegram channel. On the night of August 21st, 2025, the Russian trade mission in Sweden, an integral part of Russian diplomatic mission in that country, was again attacked using a drone from which a package of paint was dropped. Previous such an attacks occurred on June 17 and July 5th. 2025, and some might say, you know what, it's just a paint, no big deal. But no, difference. It's a big deal, because it's an integral part of a diplomatic mission, and diplomatic missions, by the way, should be protected. And nothing to discuss there. Diplomatic missions, as long as you have diplomatic relationships with the country, then you are a country. If you are a country, of course, you as a country are obligated to protect diplomatic missions of the foreign states, right? And Sweden has to protect Russian diplomats, Russian diplomatic missions. They are not doing their job. They are ignoring these obligations, and therefore, and by the way, if they are dropping today paint, where is the guarantee that tomorrow they're not going to drop bombs? Can anybody actually guarantee that these extremists not going to drop hand grenades tomorrow, or some improvised explosion devices? There is no such guarantees, right? So therefore, if Sweden continues to ignore the situation, then I guess Moscow will not really have much option but to consider on serious level withdrawing its diplomatic staff from Sweden, and either downgrading relationships towards their minimal as possible, or to completely cut diplomatic ties. I don't think this will benefit Sweden in any way, shape, or form. But yet again, if they are not protecting diplomatic missions, then there is not really much choice left, isn't it? And also, dear friends, I want to share with you this information that Latvian border guard was killed by a landmine planted by their Latvian militaries. planted by his own government to deter, to allegedly, to deter Russian threat. These freaking psychopaths, man. This marks the first fatality since the Latvia withdrew from the Ottawa Convention in April, ending its ban on anti-personnel mines. President Edgars Rankevičius personally signed the law. According to short Telegram channel, the guard died in a hospital after rescue attempt failed. The Latvian border guard, and this is first occasion when Latvian military personnel, armed personnel, is being killed as a result of crazy activity of their political leadership. And I think this is not the last time, by the way. They literally are mining everything all along the border. And there are going to be instances when not just border guards being killed, but also civilians that might get lost in the area or just walked on a minefield that they didn't know existed, right? Nothing to be said about domestic animals that blew up on these minefields and wild animals, by the way, right? They definitely don't give a damn about it. They will cross over the minefield and yeah, it's gonna be a mess, by the way. And it's not just Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia are doing the same. And I think Poland didn't go any further than that. Poles are also mining a borderline big time, and they're gonna see also casualties as a result of this craziness. It's just crazy, man, what they are doing. Anyways, let's continue. Excuse me. Middle East, by the way, of course, we have to touch up on this topic. Netanyahu green-lighted immediate negotiations to end the war and release all hostages, allegedly, according to reports, although he also simultaneously approved their plan to take control of Gaza City. And the Israeli armed forces already have begun escalating, and reports are that Israeli forces again pounding Gaza City and surrounding areas, and they're destroying whatever is left there. Almost nothing is left. They are now turning rubble into dust. That's what they do, basically. And they're not going to stop, by the way. I said many times before, until Israel, fascist entity that Israel, modern Israel has become, is going to be stopped forcefully by international community. This fascist entity will not stop genociding Palestinians now and everyone else later. Everyone that they can kill, they will kill until they are stopped. That's how it is. RT is also reporting that, Israel wants all Gaza, even if Hamas accepts a deal, Netanyahu said. So they're beginning this operation to push out, by the way, all the survivors of Israeli genocide out of the Gaza Strip. So Israel will take all Gaza, even if Hamas agrees to a hostage deal, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has stated. And yet again, how many indicators we're going to have to realize, world community, everyone to realize that until this very world community will, if it even exists, by the way, I don't know how long it's going to take before countries in this world will actually get together and do something about fascist Israel, by the way. That yet again, not going to stop until they are forced to stop, right? Israel, fascist Israel, that exists right now has to be demilitarized, and fascist Israelis, and that is majority of Israelis, by the way, not some 1% or 2% or 3%. Majority of Israelis are fascists, right? According to latest surveys, some 82% of Israelis are in support of everything that IDF did in Gaza. That is genocide, by the way. They are in support of genocide. So those fascists have to undergo denazification programs. It's just absolutely necessary, right? And until world community will do something about it, these fascists are going to continue to kill innocent, by the way, left and right. That's how it is. And they will force, they will either kill everybody in Gaza, and they are actually trying to do so, and they will push survivors out of Gaza. It's just too clear, isn't it? That is their plan. And then they will turn on the West Bank. They will do the same there, which is already, by the way, destroyed there in a big way. Half of the West Bank is permanently occupied, and there is these settlements, illegal settlements all over, right? And once they will do the same in the West Bank, killing everybody. They will do the same in Lebanon, in Syria, in southern Syria especially, right? They want that territory too. They want even Damascus, by the way. In the Greater Israel Project, Damascus is their city. And they will do the same with Jordan, with Egypt. They will kill everybody, man. That's what they are, these fascists, man. And they have to be stopped. At this point, there is at this stage, it is not really any point to analyze what Netanyahu's regime is doing in detail. They are genocidal maniacs, right, by the way, and they have to be stopped. That's it. There is no time to be wasted, right, on talks about is Israel has this right and that right, and does Israel commit genocide or not. They do. It's a fascist state which has to be demilitarized and denazified. Period. There is no need for any discussions, by the way. If one has a heart and soul, then understands that this is the truth, by the way. They are killing innocent babies, innocent people, by the way, non-stop for how long now? They have to be stopped. And while Trump is pretending to be president of peace, by the way, I mean, little by little, but U.S. is getting closer and closer to yet another war, this time in South America against Venezuela. And U.S. already has sent allegedly 3 warships, one big amphibious warship with about 4,000 troops, allegedly, on the border. Also, some PSYOPs been activated by CIA, I believe. There was some explosions in Bogota, I believe, in Colombia, by the way, and of course, blame gonna goes for U.S. gonna try to shift the blame on Venezuela. Already statements being made by high-ranking officials of U.S. Even White House made a statement accusing Maduro and his government to be involved big time in drug trafficking and that kind of stuff. I remind you that recently U.S. Trump was that, I believe, issued yet another decree to authorize basically law enforcement agencies to go into other countries under pretext of fighting against drug cartels, right? So basis for that, legal basis was created, right? And there are now accusations of Venezuela for being, like leading country in the drug trafficking and stuff. And it is going towards the war, by the way. Massive escalation in the region. And therefore, some countermeasures have been taken by Caracas. And we have this report that President of Venezuela announced their mobilization of their militia in connection with their threat from the United States. Conscription of militia, by the way, is taking place. Reservists and all those who wish to join will take place on August 23. So from tomorrow, by the way, large-scale mobilization is taking place. The Bolivarian National Militia, according to Maduro, has more than 4.5 million people, right? And the majority of them probably will get mobilized. Some other groups will be created. I don't know. This is a big escalation, by the way. If Maduro and his intelligence service, also if allies of Maduro did not have their intelligence that US is actually serious this time and will go all the way to overthrow government there to recolonize Venezuela, if they don't have 100% information on that, they would not go this far, by the way, to begin mobilizing millions and millions of people, right? Because it just it takes too much effort, right? Too much resources. So you're not gonna do that if you are not 100% sure that war is coming. So I'm afraid big escalation is going to happen there. And as I said, by the way, U.S. officials already preparing the ground for escalation with Venezuela. And for example, DEA Director Terry Cole has labeled Venezuela a narco-terrorist state, accusing the Maduro. Somewhat similar statements was made by Caroline Lewitt, White House press spokesman, like a few days ago. And now this one, who accused Maduro's government of collaborating with Colombia's FARC and ELN to flood the U.S. with cocaine, fentanyl, and methamphetamines. I mean, last time I checked, U.S. was blaming China for methamphetamines and fentanyl and that kind of stuff. But they don't give a damn, man, right? They don't care. They don't even remember what they said yesterday. You know, this narrative has been chosen to justify escalation with Venezuela, topic of drugs, right? They think a vast majority of society or majority of society in US will support anything that will indicate fight against drug cartels or drug influx into US. People, majority probably would not even ask questions about specifics, right? So yesterday it was China that was blamed for fentanyl epidemic. Today they're gonna blame Venezuela. I mean, if US cannot do much against China, they can do something against Venezuela, and they're gonna try, right? Which is bad, by the way. I mean, I don't think US needs yet another war, but they are getting closer to that. And let me give you a video of the statements that is individual made.
Has turned into a narco-terrorist state that continues to work with the FARC, continues to work with ELN from Colombia to send record amounts of cocaine from Venezuela, from Colombia, into the Mexican cartels that continue to come into the United States at record amounts. We have seized more cocaine this year than past years. The amount of methamphetamine coming into this country continues to be on the uptick, and we still see record amounts of fentanyl coming into our country. But the Venezuelan corruption, the Venezuelan dictatorship, he is a narco-terrorist. They continue to send this poison to the United States, killing hundreds of thousands of Americans, not to mention the TDA members that they send to our country to destroy the beautiful streets of the United States.
So, by the way, I mean, they are pushing for a war with Venezuela. I mean, it might not be a massive war, but you just never know. You just never know. As I said, the reports are that at least 3 warships were sent, including big amphibious warship with several thousand troops on board. U.S. will, of course, use whatever assets they have inside the Venezuela and in the neighboring countries to provoke conflict, to provoke the escalation, and then use that as a pretext for a further engagement, potentially direct kinetic engagement against Venezuelan forces and the republic there. So I don't know if public is paying attention to these developments in US, but they should. They should, because their fellow citizens might be sent there to die in Venezuelan jungles now, right? And fight if it comes to actual war, by the way. Urban warfare will be just a little part of it, right? Mainly, resistance forces will be stationed in the jungles, right? And Are U.S. troops really ready for that? To repeat what had happened in Vietnam? Do they really want it? I don't know. Or do U.S. citizens want this? I don't think so, but well, it was obvious, by the way. It was obvious from the beginning of the second term of Trump's administration that they gonna try to recolonize all the countries in Latin America that managed to escape either partially or completely grip of a U.S. political class, and that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna try at least, right? Also, interesting news that Polish President Nawrocki goes nuclear. He embraces basically nuclear power, ditching a wind power bill which was on his desk. And you know what? When something good is done, well, we have to acknowledge this, isn't it? Obviously, I'm not a big fan of Polish political class. They are scum of humanity. All of them, by the way. Entire Polish political elite is a scum of humanity. I have no respect for them whatsoever, and will never have. Right? They don't deserve it. But sometimes by randomly or anyhow, but they do make some sensible decisions, and this one is definitely one of those. Nuclear power is the future, by the way. Now it's a fission reactors that are operating, but soon, hopefully, scientists will reach breakthrough in fusion technology, right? And we will have a little suns, by the way, here on Earth. Reactors on a fusion reaction that will power whole planet. By the way, it will be much safer and much cheaper than anything else humanity has come up with until now. So nuclear is definitely a way to go. And these wind farms, by the way, and there are solar farms and that kind of stuff is, I mean, sometimes might be useful, but to rely on that seriously, you have to be, out of your mind, man. You cannot, in state, no country can rely on wind or solar power at this stage of our evolution on a general scale, right? Because it's just too risky. It's just too risky, man. Idea of renewables, it's a great idea, right? No one wants fossil fuels to be used if not necessary, right? We all want to see this utopia where everything is cool and there is freaking paradise or stuff, something like that. But let's be real. Let's be real. We are not there, and we might never get there, actually. Right? So nuclear power is definitely a way to go. And Germany made such a cruel for German people mistake while deciding to get rid of nuclear power plants, by the way. How crazy was that, man? And now German economy is in recession because of the lack of energy accessible, not just accessible, but due to lack of relatively cheap energy. And nuclear power stations do provide this relatively cheap energy, by the way. Also, RIA Novosti is reporting that Russian foreign minister yesterday and then Russian president had a meeting with the foreign minister of India, Subramaniam Jaishankar, legendary foreign minister, of course, and sides confirmed strategical level of relationships between their countries and discuss further deepening of the ties, cooperation in all fields, from economical to military, industrial to other, right? Which is great, by the way. Moscow stands with New Delhi, and that's how it's supposed to be. 100%. RT is also reporting the Chinese refiners boost Russian oil imports. So Chinese oil refineries have ramped up imports of Russian crude after India scaled back purchases under U.S. tariff pressure, CNN reported on Wednesday, citing analysts. China and India become the top buyers of Russian oil after Western sanctions hit Moscow following the escalation of the Ukraine conflict in 2022. U.S. President Donald Trump recently imposed a 25% tariff on Indian imports on top of another 25%, by the way. So it's a 50% tariffs now, right? Maui Hu, senior crude analyst at Kepler, told CNN that Chinese state-owned and major private refineries have purchased about 13 cargoes of Russian crude for October and at least 2 for November to be shipped from Russian Arctic and Black Sea ports, routes that usually serve India. Who called the move opportunistic, citing Russian crude's $3 per barrel discount over Middle Eastern alternatives, and predicted China will likely continue to step up imports as Trump is still pressuring harder on India, while Trump has said he might impose tariffs on China for buying Russian oil as well. He told Fox News that last week that he was not considering it immediately, and Indian refineries have not commented publicly on this report. Although Bloomberg and Reuters reported on Wednesday that India has resumed Russian oil purchases after a brief pause, and that Indian oil and Bharat Petroleum this week's Bharat India has resumed Russian oil purchases after a brief pause, and Indian oil and Bharat Petroleum this week secured their shipments for September and October. India has denounced Trump's tariffs as unfair, unjustified, and unreasonable, which is true, by the way, absolutely. And well, India resumed purchases, by the way, of Russian oil. This is our Indian state-run companies. Indian private companies never actually stopped buying Russian oil, right? And state refineries also began purchasing. So it was a short pause. China used the opportunity and brought whatever volume of oil was available on the Russian energy market at the time. But, well, I don't think they're going to maintain this pace because, well, it's hardly possible that or plausible that the Indian business will get rid of this extremely profitable margin that they have on the energy market right now due to cooperation with Russia. They are making billions, by the way, and billions. So who would say no to that, right? Also, dear friends, a few more news. Boeing could be selling 500 jets to China, according to Bloomberg. This would be Beijing's first major order since Trump's visit to country during his last term, but deal reportedly pushing ahead despite the tariff threats. Okay, it's a bigger contract, by the way. 500 planes will allow Boeing to be busy for decade at least, right? It's massive. It's a massive contract, and I guess despite their decline in the relationships, a serious decline in the relationships between Beijing and Washington, I guess Chinese avio companies don't really have much choice because they have to have a planes, right? They need planes, and they are purchasing whatever they can from Airbus. They are purchasing whatever they can purchase from domestic aerospace industry, and that's about it. There is Boeing, right? Among big players, there is either Airbus or Boeing, right? At this point, and maybe they think they have no choice but to purchase Boeing. They have both, by the way. I mean, do they read news about Boeing every other day? There is some situation with their Boeing planes. Just yesterday, I saw a video of Boeing 737 that was, I believe, of Delta, that almost lost, not just almost, but practically lost, by the way, part of its wing during the flight. Plane landed safely, but nevertheless, I mean, every other day there is some story with Boeing. Quality control in this company is like almost non-existent, it seems like, right? And Chinese still are purchasing or planning to purchase 500 planes. Are you crazy? Invest in Russian aerospace industry, for God's sake. Buy Russian MS-21s. You're going to be better off, right? Why you are investing in Boeing? What the hell, man? It's crazy, but anyways, that's the information, by the way. Also, RIA Novosti is reporting that leaders of over 20 countries together for Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in China. So more than 20 leaders of foreign states, as well as the representatives of the international organizations, will take part in the summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Tianjin. Assistant Minister of the Foreign Affairs of the People's Republic of China, Louis Bin, said at the press conference, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit will be held in Tianjin from August 31st to September 1st. And it's going to be a big gathering, by the way, definitely big gathering. Of course, Russian delegation will be there too. And this is good. This is good, by the way. For everybody who supports the idea of multipolarity, will support further development of these international organizations too, like Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS, and so on. And this is it when it comes to news segment of this update, dear friends. Hopefully you did find it informative and useful. A lot of news, isn't it? A lot of news, and a lot to think about, obviously. And dear friends, if you like the video, please like it. Click that like button too. That might help. And after 3 months, if you can, please leave some commentary. Make assessment of my work, for example. Anything. More comments and likes, by the way, do help to deal with the algorithm, I believe. And I guess there was no. Oh, dear friends, and yesterday during their interview, by the way, with the military expert, political commentator Stanislav Krapivnik, a number of members of our community used the super chat feature on Rumble and send the comments and donated to the project, and also send questions on the comments. And let me highlight, dear friends, this. I was unable to do it yesterday, and if I may, I will highlight these questions and the comments today. So it will take just a minute. So Banzo Beans, our moderator on Rumble, asked yesterday during the live stream with Stanislav Krapivnik, how Shadow is a shadow fleet, and well, it's not really shadow in reality. Western so-called elites, Western propaganda outlets are calling vessels that are connected one way or another with Russia's shadow fleet, because those vessels have not been insured by British insurance companies. In London, by the way, these vessels have not been insured in London, and that's why, because they have sort of monopoly on this business, as on many other things, by the way, when it comes to financial flows, financial institutions. Well, they decided to call it a shadow fleet. It's not shadow fleet. It's not a secret fleet. It's just the vessels, by the way, ordinary vessels. They are not insured in London, and that's why they've been called shadow fleet. That's all. really. It's not some kind of pirate operation that no one knows where these vessels are or something. No, these vessels are navigating the seas as every other vessel. Only difference actually is that they have not been insured in London, and London is a major or leading force when it comes to maritime insurance. City of London, right? So that's all. It's not really shadow fleet, by the way. That's just a terminology that Western elites, Western propaganda come up with to somehow create this negative aura or negative background around their vessels that are connected with Russia. That's all, right? In reality, these are ordinary vessels that do their business as every other, right? Michael Kennedy is commenting Lloyd's of London. Yes, for example, right? So that's one question from yesterday. Also, Blorper and John Banzo Beans, thank you very much for your question and dollar donation. Also, dear friends, yesterday Blorper donated $5 to the projector and commented, it takes men to raise their kids of adult society of people would need to have a shot at the future generations of viable, functioning people. Western society has no adults. We no longer have a man. Blorp is commenting quite a depressing comment that indicates quite a negative reality in the Western world that Blorp is seeing and shares with us. He's reading. Hopefully things will improve. What can I say about it, Blorp? Thank you very much for your $5 donation and for your commentary. And also, dear friends, Viper 314206, Viper donated $50 yesterday during your stream. Thank you very much, Viper, for your generous donation. And the comment from Viper is that Trump supporters and the Russians agree Trump needs to get out of Ukraine. And you are on point. I believe majority of Trump supporters actually want U.S. to be out of this proxy war that globalists are waging against Russia. There is nothing in it for U.S. citizens, 100%. And I'm on the same page with you, Viper. Thank you very much for your donation. U.S. should get out of this conflict, and Moscow and Washington should find ways to improve relationships, because we have no reasons. If we are objective, then we will agree that we have no reasons to be hostile, our countries, and we have every reason to be allies, actually. If not allies maybe is a strong word, especially on the background of a current situation, but at least we can build good working relationships, right? That will be beneficial for peoples of both countries, right? And I think Viper will agree with me on that too. So thank you very much, Viper, for your donation and for your commentary. And this was from yesterday's live stream, dear friends. Today there was no there was no donation or either from Boosty or PayPal or Super Chat, and because I have nothing left to highlight there. Let me engage with the chat, dear friends. As always, I will scroll now as fast as I can. Once again, you know what? I'm going to show you how it looks in reality when I'm scrolling through the chat. By the way, I am seeing comments from YouTube and Rumble simultaneously in one window. And because some members are mad on me why I missed question. and just to once again explain how it looks. That's how it is. It's gonna look weird, by the way. So screen, let me share screen. And where is the, that's it, by the way. And I will share with you now screen. That's what I see, by the way, right now. That's a screen capture that I see, right? And on the right side, you see this window here. There is questions and the comments from both channels, YouTube and Rumble. And when I'm engaged in a community chat, I'm just scrolling this fast. And when I spot capital letters like I did right now, by the way, Nidish Kumar commented, and I will switch to this comment in a second. When I spot it, right? Then I continue to scroll, and when I see capital letters again, I react on that. That's how it works, right? We have a big community chat on Sundays when I'm taking more time because it's a fundraising stream, a big community chat, and that's a different story. But on work days, I'm have only so much time, isn't it? So, okay, that's been said. Hopefully, this explanation will work, and no one will get angry on me for missing a question or not seeing it. So let me now find this comment from Nidish. Nidish Kumar commented, Levan, I think they are investigating it because they are not getting their insurance back. Nidish is talking about Nord Stream pipelines, I guess. Well, they are investigating it because they have to, with or without insurance, but they have to be processed in a place, isn't it? Because this was a joint project. It was not just Russian project. It was joint project between Russia and Germany. It's huge German investments were made in this project, by the way. Majority of investments, I believe, was actually from Germany, right? And this attack on Nord Stream pipelines were direct hit by NATO member states on another NATO member state. It's national security interests, right? US, Norway, I believe Poland and UK were engaged too. They attacked formally their ally that Germany supposed to be, right? Or at least supposed to be treated like. And they have to be processed now in a place to investigate. Answers has to be given. But of course, these investigators, even if they actually conducted some classified investigation and did find out that, well, explosives on the spot, by the way, and their radar indicators at the time of explosions and many other things are indicating that this was a work of U.S. Navy SEALs or U.S. Special Services with the participation of Norway's fleet military reserve, for example, and stuff like that. Even if German investigators have factual evidences of that, they cannot release it, isn't it? They cannot release it because in that case, well, Berlin will have to do something, right? And what they gonna do? You tell me. What Berlin gonna do? Berlin is run by puppets, right? German government is not a servant of the German people. And this is case since the Second World War, by the way. German people never had in a government people that were actually serving society. Germany is ruled since the Second World War by occupation regimes. That was the case in Eastern Germany. That was the case in Western Germany, and it is the case in United Germany. So Berlin can do nothing and will do nothing. So therefore, especially for this case, CIA and the rest of them they did set up this group of citizens of Ukraine to basically keep them as a scapegoat, right? And German investigators, took this line as they've been ordered, I guess, and eventually, that's That's what they're going to say, that it was this independent group of Ukrainian citizens that conducted this operation that only few countries in this world can actually do. Only few countries in this world have experts, by the way, to conduct such a sabotage operation. But somehow these freaking elements from Kiev regime controlled territory managed to pull off this attack. Total nonsense, right? This group was set up to serve as a scapegoat from the beginning. Also, I spotted this question from Gracie Knoll. There are 300 billion of Russian sovereign funds that have been stolen. Are they included in any negotiations with the US? I have not heard any mention of this. I believe our topic of sanctions was discussed during the negotiations between the negotiating teams, and also in Alaska. At least there was reports about it, that there are certain expectations that Moscow has if process of the escalation will actually go forward. But you are correct. There was no specifics about this frozen Russian assets. I remind you, dear friends, that about $100 billion worth of Russian assets, Russian investments, are frozen in U.S. jurisdiction, and there are about 200 billion, even more, a bit more, was frozen in jurisdiction of Brussels, right? And reports are that not just profits have been stolen from these assets, but assets themselves too, especially by Europeans, right? And if this is true, by the way, well, that's going to have a massive outcome, massive impact, by the way, on whatever is remains from reputation of the European economy. Investors gonna stay far away, right? But there is no details. Gracie, you are correct. There are no much details. Maybe it's just too early for the sides to discuss nuances. But I do believe there were reports that sanctions was discussed during the negotiations. And dear friends, I believe there was just now there was a super chat on Rumble. Let me highlight, if I may. Just a sec, dear friends. Andre Kiwi, thank you very much for $2 donation and for your super chatter. Comment from Andre Kiwi is that thanks, Levan. Wish I could donate more, but tough times. Thank you very much, Andre, for your $2 donation. I'm truly grateful for your support and attention, and I'm grateful to everybody, by the way, for supporting me, helping me to stay in this field of news and political commentary. Everything counts, as I said, dear friends. $1, $2 supporter, $5 support, or $50 support. Everything helps to maintain this project and to stay in this field. So thank you very much, Andrew, for your donation and for your kind words. Let me continue with scrolling this window here. Nitish Kumar is also commenting. Levan, Trump's treasury openly saying he gets 10% for weapons delivered to Ukraine. I watched that video, Nitish. I watched that video episode, short clip of statement when Besant was saying that US is selling weapons to Europeans, and when Europeans resell those weapons to Ukrainians, 10% kickback is going to Washington, It's insane, isn't it? This, I mean, they are engaged. These money laundering schemes that being deployed, by the way, by Washington, Brussels, and other capitals, is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. At this point, I'm quite sure no one really knows destiny of final destiny of tens of billions of dollars and euros, by the way, from U.S. and European taxpayers. It's just insane what is happening. It's totally corrupt system, all over the collective West, isn't it? And they are clearly using Ukrainian crisis not just to harm Russia, but also to enrich themselves on some tremendous levels. I mean, they are getting filthy rich, by the way, on a tragedy of people, on death of the people. But they don't care. They don't care. Few more minutes, dear friends. Danny Deval is commenting, Paris is a 5-hour drive from my place. If you take a wrong turn, there you end up on a different planet. There are lots of uncontrolled suburbs around the Paris. Thank you very much, Danny, for commenting and sharing your knowledge. I have never been there in France. In Paris, I don't know what's going on there, but I take your commentary, your statement for a better understanding of the situation. And yes, I based on videos that I have seen, by the way, I may never been there, but I have seen quite a lot of videos on it, on YouTube and stuff, right? And I can see picture that you are sharing with us, some ghetto type districts, areas where most likely some ethnic minorities, potentially religious minorities, are living without being much integrated into the rest of the societies. And it well might be that even police is trying to avoid those places. I mean, if these areas are living by their own laws and rules, then you go there, and if you are not careful enough, you may never come back. I can see something like that is happening for sure. And why is that? Why is that? All because of the crazy criminal policies, basically. Criminal policies of European elites, isn't it? That's what it is. And migration, by the way, is a big issue. Migration is an issue here in Russia too, by the way. Maybe not as Austria. How should I say Austria? Maybe migration is not a number one topic of discussion here in Russia, but it is in a conversation. Although, by the way, situation is much different as far as I can tell here in Russia than it is in Europe. Much different. It's not that bad here, man. Unfortunately, because time to time there are some incidents when work migrants and Russia is dealing with basically working migration, right? Russia needs more workforce, and people from all over the world, including from former Soviet republics, are migrating to Russia for better life, for and who can judge them for that, isn't it? But unfortunately, not everybody wants to actually integrate into society. Not everybody is even trying to learn the language. I mean, if you live in Russia, at least for God's sake, try to learn the language and just be respectful of a country and the society that you are in, right? Be grateful. And some some are not acting appropriately, not even trying, and those elements usually end up in some stories, some situations, and it does create overall negative attitude towards the migrants. So we all know how this plays out, isn't it? But in the West, situation is like million times worse, as far as I can tell. Here in Russia, government is definitely tries to create a ground to make it easier as much as possible for migrants to learn the language, to integrate, basically, to integrate into society, because you don't need no enclaves, by the way, of different ethnic groups that are not integrated into society. You don't need that, right? You need all ethnic groups to be part of one united society that Russians are, right? And it can be done. It is done in many ways, and their work continues in this direction. And government is trying to improve the situation, but yet again, we are not facing nothing like it is in the West. By the way, in the West, as far as I can tell, is situation is much worse, and this situation was escalating and becoming or deteriorating for decades. It's nothing new, isn't it? For decades, by the way. I remember, by the way, when I was in Bradford, in UK. It's a Yorkshire, by the way. I was living one period in Leeds. It's a wonderful student city, by the way. Great city, was at least some 25 years ago. I don't know what is going on now, but it was a great city. Tiny maybe, but wonderful city. A great university, by the way, in Leeds. And not far away from that city, there is Bradford, also another city. And when I went there first time, I had some sort of a cultural shock. I didn't expect that, because Bradford was, it did not left on me impression that I was in England. It did not. And I have nothing against any peoples, by the way, never will. But my belief is that if you are in England, I lived in England, by the way, for a number of years, and I was respectful, by the way. I did my best to not just learn the language, by the way, but to learn history, to learn culture. I was acting as respectfully as I can, and I only have a good memories, by the way, right? It was a hard time. I was a young student, right? Young and stupid, but nevertheless, I had enough brains, by the way, to act properly, right? And therefore, sometimes there might was some difficulties, but in general, I only have great memories from UK, and I truly feel sorry for society there if they are undergoing some difficulties now, and even then, there was already certain tensions, by the way, right? It's a Bradford, it's a Edinburgh, I believe, also a number of other cities where tensions are high, and this is because state institutions failed basically to create a good enough ground for better adaptation and better incorporation of incoming waves of the migrants into society, right? I'm not an expert in this field, obviously, but when I say this is a migration topic and the stretch of social fabric is an issue for Europe for decades and decades, it is really the case. Members of our community from Europe can tell, can correct me if I'm wrong. This issue did not was created just yesterday, by the way. It's a long-term issue. And it is getting worse, isn't it? It is getting worse. At this point, I don't even know what can be done, because clearly there is a divide in a society, on societies in European countries, in many European countries, on ethnic and religious lines, which is extremely dangerous, by the way, isn't it? Which is extremely dangerous. You don't want to see any divide on religious or ethnic lines, because it will blow up at one point, right? And so that's my wife Anya is commenting about my memories when I went first time in Bradford. Yes, I mean, it was a sort of I didn't expect it, right? So I was a bit shocked. Nothing shocked me in UK, nothing literally. I didn't have a cultural shock when I went there. Initially, only element of cultural shock that I experienced was when I went to Bradford, because I just didn't expect, to see what I see. Right? I'm not saying this is good or bad. I'm sharing my experience. Danny Daval is commenting also. Levan, we in Holland see a lot of defense ads on Facebook and other to enlist, but 99.9% of comments are all negative and rejecting it, because we know that that is a scam. Danny, if you have seen yesterday's interview of mine with Stanislav Krapivnik, at one point we also spoke about risks of a confrontation with between further confrontation or direct clashes between West and Russia, between Europe and Russia. And me and him, we both said that no, you're gonna find it's extremely difficult here in Russia, by the way, if you conduct survey, to find even a single person who will tell you that yes, we have to go and have a war with any of the European states. By the way, I mean, you name it, Holland, Baltic states, Poland, Hungary, Romania, Germany, France. You're gonna find it's extremely difficult to find even one person who will actually say in full seriousness that, I mean, we have to go and fight a war with some European states. All this talk of the Western elites about Russian threat is a projection. That's what Western elites might actually want. They want a war to save themselves, I guess, right? To divert public's attention from actual issues that people are facing. But when it comes to Russia, by the way, we don't want no war. If it comes to it, we will fight, by the way. We will give our best. But we don't want no war, man. Right? And therefore, I guess many people, or majority of people in Holland, in those comments that you mentioned, do understand this, that Russians don't want to fight us. They don't see us as enemies. They don't want no war. And so they don't buy into this propaganda of the regime to enlist and get ready for a war. What war, man? What war? These globalists and their puppet regimes are truly are psychos, man. That's all it is, right? Why would anybody in proper mind would wanted a war with the other country? It's insane, isn't it? This live stream is already more than 2 hours, dear friends. Nidish Kumar is also commenting they can buy airplanes from Brazil. Yes, they can do. They can buy Briars, right? Although Briars are medium range or short range planes, if not necessarily, but I guess Chinese companies are looking for wide fuselage planes for longer routes, and well, they can buy those. They can invest in Russian aerospace industry. By the way, MS-21 is almost ready. By the way, almost ready to be authorized in mass production. And I think MS-21 is going to be much better plane, by the way, that Boeing will ever produce. I mean, if I was a head of avio company, by the way, I would not even consider buying Boeing. I truly, man. I mean, no, something is wrong with that company big time. It truly seems like there is no quality control there whatsoever, because how on earth every single day we are seeing videos or upon videos about some emergency situations that Boeing planes are experiencing constantly. No stories about Russian planes, no stories about Airbus, very rare occasions. Things happen, but very rarely you're going to hear about some emergencies on Russian planes or Airbus, or very same Briar, by the way. It's a Briar, isn't it, that Brazil is producing? But every day you hear some stuff about Boeing. So I don't know, maybe this is a negotiating tip or negotiating point of Beijing with Washington, because this contract on 500 planes, it's tens of billions of dollars, isn't it? It's something big, and it will keep busy Boeing factories for decades, right? So at least 2 decades, by the way. So it is a big deal. So probably that's what is in play. Otherwise, Chinese aerospace industries on its own is working on a wide fuselage plane, and I believe they did have some success in this regard. They are already operating at least 2 models of domestically built wide fuselage planes, or one is a wide fuselage plane, another is not. But they do have at least 2 planes, I believe, that already are operational in Chinese airlines. Matthew K is asking, Levan, we know that Ukraine has focused on southern Russia. I think they will attempt to do something to their city of Rostov-on-Don, where the Russian strategic commander center is. Do you agree? On the topic of focus of the Kyiv regime's forces and their NATO allies on southern Russia, for many months, by the way, now, I agree with you. It's true. It's true. Every single day, I'm reporting about number of drones that Russian air defense systems intercepted during the previous night, for example. And I mean, you can see there is a clearly focus on the southern Russian regions, right? I guess this is done on purpose for certain reasons. I don't think reason is to deplete Russian air defense systems so that they will effectively strike a headquarter of the SMO that is allegedly located in Rostov-on-Don. But I will agree with you that something probably is in plans. Either this is an operation to divert Russian attention, either they are creating this false narrative that they are planning something towards southern Russia, while in reality, maybe they are planning something towards other direction. Maybe that's what is happening. Or maybe they actually are planning some operations in direction of southern Russia. This is a topic that we just cannot have an answer on that. Russian military intelligence and counterintelligence services have to work on the issue, and hopefully they will successfully find out whatever operational and strategical plans Kiev regime and NATO has to secure Russian society and the Russian Federation. But on the topic of increase attempts to strike southern Russia, I agree with you. It's factual, isn't it? I mean, every single day, majority of drones for quite a while now, isn't it? Majority of drones are intercepted in the southern regions. Maybe because, logistics, right? Maybe it's connected with logistics. After all, southern regions are engaged. Magistrals, communication lines of the southern regions are involved in logistical operations to provide Russian armed forces that are operating on in the zone of special military operation. But maybe this is the reason, but maybe something else is also happening. I just don't know. I cannot know, by the way. We can only speculate, and I don't think there is much usefulness in such speculations. Hopefully, Russian general staff, Russian military intelligence, and Russian leadership knows exactly what the plans of NATO leadership and their proxies in Kiev are. And also, Matthew K is asking, Levan, I know that Poland and Russia has a complicated history, but do Russians like the Poles? Do you like Poland? I don't hate Poland, by the way. I don't hate Polish people. Absolutely not. I mentioned that I was living in England, isn't it, for quite a while when I was young, and I met very many Polish people, by the way, my generation, and I had great relationships with them. Great relationships. No issues, by the way. So I have no bad feelings towards the Polish people. I don't have bad feeling towards any people, by the way, right? And the majority of Russians are built that way. Majority of people in the former Soviet Union are built that way because what we were learning from their younger age in Soviet Union, that all of us, all the peoples of Soviet Union are brotherly nations, right? And that was one of the greatest achievements of Soviet Union, by the way, right? That so many different ethnic groups, religious groups, so many different cultures were living together in peace and with respect towards each other, right? So therefore, I only wish good to Polish people, by the way. Happiness, prosperity, success. I would not wish nothing bad to Poles. Polish elites, political leadership of Poland is a different stuff, obviously. And my attitude towards Polish elites are tremendously negative. But when it comes to Polish people, man, I only wish them happiness and success and everything good, man. Why should I have any negative attitude towards the ordinary people like I am, by the way? I mean, that's my answer. And I think majority of us, by the way, are on the same page. We don't hate peoples, right? I mean, we don't operate that way. We don't waste time on all sorts of phobias, by the way, right? So we don't hate no people. Political leadership of this country or that country that is hostile towards Russia, whole different story. But people, oh man, people are people, right? And I believe we ordinary people are only allies that we're gonna ever get, right? We should consider each other allies no matter where we live, because we only have each other. That's all. Elites, by the way, they're not gonna care about us. Never. If we are lucky, then in our country, elites are more adequate, right? And they take in account our interests. But only so many countries can actually say that this is exactly the case there. In the Western world, I don't think there is any country, literally any country in the West, where elites are taking in account actual interests of the peoples there. Here in Russia, I'm 100% convinced, by the way, that Kremlin is paying close attention to public opinions, and they want the public to be happy. And take a look at the tremendous growth of Russian economy, by the way, and the standard of life from 90s to now. It's like two different universes, isn't it? So even though elites are living like in a different world, right? They are trying big to make sure that people are happy, life is improving, life standard is improving, and it's happening. It's actually happening, by the way. So you have, as a result, you have 70% plus approval rating of Putin because people are okay with his job, right? But I don't think Western elites are operating same way. They probably don't give a single flying F about societies there, what they think, what they feel. And they are demonstrating this, especially in Europe, by the way. They are demonstrating this literally on a daily basis, that they don't care about ordinary people, man. They're going to trigger revolt at one point, Western elites, for such a attitude towards their own fellow citizens. And dear friends, it's almost 2.5 hours. This stream is going, so I have to end it right now. Thank you very much for your attention and support, for your questions, donations. Truly grateful. Tomorrow, dear friends, live stream will start about 1 o'clock, I think, middle of the day. Let's see. I will make announcement about it, of course. And what else? Before I go, dear friends, let me remind you that if you want to support my work, you can do it through several means. All the links are on this video description box and in the pinned comment. If you have not seen yesterday's interview of mine with a military expert, political commentator, Stanislav, goodness me, man. I forgot this is embarrassing, man. Krapunik. I forgot their surname. Yes, I mean, it happens, sometimes you might forget your own name, right? So if you have not seen the interview, dear friends, please check that interview. You're going to find it very interesting because Stanislav did share a great volume of very interesting information during that interview, during that conversation that we had yesterday. And yes, what else? This is it, I guess. For now, have a wonderful day. Thank you for your time and attention, and take care. See you tomorrow.